Welcome everybody, Steve here, on to another project today, and today it's going to be a wood project. Now, I've always wanted to build a couple more of these. I've built some in the past, but they're just, little serving trays, and I use them for camping, I use them for in the house. It's just so nice to have. And what I'm going to be doing is taking some wood from, I just picked up a couple of pallets and cut these pieces of wood out. This one here is pine. I've already done a little bit of oak. I had one pallet that was oak. So we're going to plane these down. So basically on the ends it's going to come up, there's going to be a bit of a handle, and then just some thin 1/4 inch slats for the sides. That's all it is, with a 1/2 inch plywood bottom. Very simple little project, but a nice little project. You can use up a lot of your scrap wood that you have. We're always looking for those projects to use up that stuff, and this is a great one for that. So I got my little planer set up here, and what I've done, I had the good side out. I turned my blade so that I had the dull side, because you can see this stuff here it's kind of dirty. You don't know if there's going to be a little piece of gravel on there or what. So be a little careful and just use your dull ones. Once you've gotten them planed down a little bit, you can flip them back up. But for the most part, pine is pretty easy to plane. So I'm going to plane these down. I'm going to plane them so that they're a little thicker than a 1/2 inch. These ones here, that live edge, I'm going to try and incorporate that into the side. See how that works. I haven't done it before. But for the ends, basically just need to have a couple pieces so I can glue them together and make our ends. So those are going to be, if I can keep them at about 5/8 or 9/16, that's great. Because once I glue them together, then I can run through the planer again. So let's get at her. So these are this come off the pine pallet that I had, and this came off the oak pallet. And I'm just kind of matching the grain. I'm not too interested in putting biscuits in here or anything like that. It's just a little tote, so there's not going to be any weight there at all. And with today's glues, you don't really have to worry about that too much. So these are still a little thicker than a 1/2 inch. And they're a little longer than what I need. So what I need is about 12.5 inches. So if I have about 14 inches, gives me a little bit of room to work with. So I'm just going to trim off, some of these little bits of split. And if there is a crack, there isn't one here. I've got one in the other one I'll show you. Don't be afraid. Put a little bit of epoxy in there. What I'm kind of looking for is some of the real gnarly stuff. The big knots, and some of the piece of wood got some really cool character. That works out really good on the ends and even on the sides. So I'm not looking for something that's absolutely perfect here. Okay, so let's glue these up. I'm going to trim these on the saw, make them about 14, and then we're just going to glue them up. Now I did joint these. I was at a place where I could use a jointer today, so that worked out really good. And I do have one out of the acreage, so I'll probably take these there tomorrow and joint those there. But that really makes it a lot easier gluing everything up. a little bit of glue, clamp it, leave it for half an hour, put it aside, and then we can plane it tomorrow and make our ends. Let's get at her. Now I'm pretty limited when it comes to clamps here, so I can only do a couple ends at a time. I'm gonna build, I think I'm gonna build 4 of them out of, get about 2 out of 1 pallet. If that makes any sense. Okay. It's amazing, absolutely amazing what you can get off of pallets. Like, I've had some wood that is so hard that you can't even run through the planer. You know, they come from these exotic places, and it's just amazing. Okay, that looks pretty good. Need to get some more glue here pretty soon. I'm using an outdoor glue because, you know, if you're using this out camping and you forget about it and it rains on it, at least it's not going to fall apart. Chip out here caused me some issues. Yeah, just squeeze it around, or slide it around. Make sure you got a nice even coat on either side. And what I'm trying to do is just line up a couple of different patterns here so that they, as long as your eye catches it and it looks good, you're fine. You don't need that much pressure on it. You don't want to squeeze out all the glue. Underneath it, make sure that we're flat with each other. Looks good there. Good there. These aren't the best clamps to be clamping this together with, but when that's all you got, now these are a little nicer clamp here. But I don't have very many of them. So that's when patience kicks in and you just do a couple at a time. If you're in production and you build these for a living, well then, you know, things are a little bit different, but we're having fun today. Don't wipe your glue off, just scrape it off later. If you wipe your glue off, you can push it into the grain. You don't need to do that. So I've got my pattern here. Now I built a few of these, so I have a pattern. And what I'm going to do here is, so I'll just give you a rough idea of what I have here. So I'm about 7.5 inches to the top, 6 1/4 this way. My slats are going to be 3 inches wide, so there'll be a 1/4 inch gap in between. And this total width is 12.5. So our plywood needs to be 12.5. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to cut my plywood with a skill saw, but I'm going to cut a little wider. And then I'm going to straighten out one edge of my blank here. And then on the other edge, when I get my 12.5 for my plywood, I'll run the plywood through, and then I'll run these through, and then you know that they're going to be exactly the same, and you don't have to worry about one being a little smaller than the other. Now, you saw me planing these down. Now with pallet wood, sometimes she's just so close, and there's nothing wrong if this has to be a little less than 1/2 inch. I'm not going to plane this anymore. I'm actually just going to use a sander, and I'm going to sand everything nice and smooth once I get it all done. I'm going to cut my hole for my handle first, and then I will just sand the rest. You know, unless you want something absolutely perfect, but I'm not looking for that. You know, these are pallet wood serving trays, and they gotta have a little personality to them, you know what I mean? So, got my blanks, gonna cut my plywood, and then set my table saw up and get everything to width. Alright, I've got the blanks all cut out, and 7.5 by 12.5. Now, when I designed this project, it was just basically to use up a lot of scrap wood that was laying around. And normally, you know, sometimes you're working with wood and there's a big knot. You know, and you cut that out, you're making a piece of furniture, you're not going to use that. Well, I would take that piece, have a great big looking, cool looking knot here, and I'd build my ends out of that. Now this one here is 12.5, and then these are 16 inch long. Now if you were going to do this and you're going to make a bunch for the market, I would shrink that down a little bit, you know, go like 11 7/8 by, you know, 15 3/4. That way, you know, you're going to utilize a full sheet of plywood. Where I came up with my dimensions, I think it was just because of the scrap piece of plywood that I had. I'm not sure. Can't remember. That was a lot of years ago. Anyway, we're going to put the hole in here now. We don't want to cut any curve in here until we've got this handle in. So all I'm going to do, just measure halfway here, is put a tick. 6 1/4. Okay. Now we got our. This is my template here for the handle. Now, I do not want to use my pattern to put the handle in because that's not what I'm going to be using the router for. The router is going to be on this, so I want this, and I'll get the most exact hole that I need when I'm using this. You know what I mean? Yeah, that. And then once you got these all marked out here, what we're going to do, we're going to take a drill bit and we're going to drill out most of our space, and we'll use a router to finish it up. Really easy. Not very easy if you're not using a jig. But if you're just building one because you want one, there's nothing wrong with using a scroll saw or a jigsaw. Taking some time with a file and sandpaper. Alright, now all it is just a matter of lining everything up on the jig. And then we're just going to use a clamp here. Make sure she's not going anywhere. Now take your time. Some of these woods are so brittle that you can do a lot of damage with your router, so make sure you're careful. Sometimes you have to go backwards so it doesn't grab. Yeah, just take your time with routing these out, and you'll be guaranteed some good results. We're going to round this over, of course, but we're going to wait till we get everything all cut out. Now, it's just a matter of tracing this out. And then normally we'd cut it out with a bandsaw, but haven't got one of those here. So I'm just going to use a jigsaw and we'll take our time cutting them out, clean them up a little bit. I got my other router set up here. Now I've got the 1/4" round over bed in there. You could probably go up to about a 3/8, depending on what kind of profile you want. Now we're gonna do the inside of the handle here and of course the outside. But what's key here is you want to stop your round over about, well, you can give it a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch away from your end, because when you put your slat on, you want this to be flush and flush. You don't want to have a little bit of a round over on this, because it wouldn't look very good at all. So you want to stop so that the top end of your end is square. Now I haven't got any fancy equipment in my life when it comes to woodworking. I've just piece of MDF, bolted my router down. Hey, that works as good as a $2,000 router table. Just don't have all that fine adjustments. Okay, let's get at her. This is the fun part. Well, we're moving along. We got the ends done. Got them nice and sanded, ready to put together. So we need to know, we want to cut these to length. Now we also have to cut our 3 inches, which is going to be our measurement here for our depth. So what my thinking is, got one here. I'm going to sand a little spot on the ends that is flat. And then what I'll do is measure down 3 inches, measure down 3 inches, draw a line, and then I'll cut it. And that will be that piece for that one, so that I can have a live edge. You know, I think it'll look kind of funky. I think it'll look good. So we need to pre-cut the lengths here, but in order to do that, we need to know our length here. The best way to do that is just put your 2 ends together up against the piece of plywood that you cut, and measure it. And it looks like I'm pretty well right on 17, which will be good. Okay, so I'm going to cut all these to 17. I've got some oak ones here as well that I'm going to do. And then we'll cut them, I'll just trim them on the table saw and get them to 3 inches. you can tell that I've been putting them together. I thought if I started filming them, I'd run out of glue and then it would just be a bust. And I ended up getting 2 done before I ran out of glue, so I should have been filming them. But that doesn't matter, I still got more to build. So everything's been sanded, it's all good. Basically what we're going to do is just use glue and brads. So on the ends, going to use a 1 1/4 brad. Work on a flat surface so that you can make sure that, you know, plywood's down, everything is down, and life will be a lot easier. You know, if you're trying to do this, trying to hold it, you know, you can do it, but it's a little bit harder to do. Alright, let's get some glue on here. My new bottle. Not overdoing it, because you don't want it to squish out everywhere. Pull that back a bit more here. This is when you know you're good with a brad nailer. You gotta make sure it's level, or she's gonna come shooting out on you. Sometimes your plywood's a little crooked, you gotta give it a bend. Just like that. Now put the sides on, basically same thing, just a little bit of glue, and I use a little smaller brad nail just to eliminate that coming out the side thing. I'm going with a 1 inch. Now I usually just brad nail one down here, just for the simple reason that if this is splayed one way or the other, I'll catch that with the top one, and then when the top one's nice and straight, then you know you're good to go. Done. Yeah, that's kind of a cool looking box. I'm sure that things will get in the way, but like, you know, that knot, that's all right. It's all about being cool, man. Well, so it's really simple if you're building this out of plywood or just some straight stock. But when it's a little bit more of a challenge when you're using pallets, but it gives it a lot of character. And then you can tell everyone, you said, well, I built that out of a pallet. And a pallet has got a lot of unique things to it, you know, like this one here is red oak. And out of the same pallet, I've got something that's completely different. I think that's hickory. So the character that you get from building stuff out of pallets is pretty neat. And it's worth the extra effort. You know, you're trying to match this and that, and I know it's a little bit tough, but give it a try. Well, I hope that, you know, you got some good ideas from what I'm doing here. That's what I'm all about. Run with it. Make it smaller, make it bigger, do whatever you want. You can make it a little shallower. This one here, of course, you know, primarily I built these so that, you know, a guy could take them out camping and throw all your stuff in there. I'm gonna finish them. I'm gonna put just a rub-on polyurethane. It's a little bit easier to get the mustard stain out if it's all finished. So I don't know if I'll get at that or not, but yeah, I'll probably film that. Show you what I do. But for this segment, we're all done. I hope you enjoyed it. And until the next one, thanks.